So what do you think is broken with OpenView?
You know what? I don't think necessarily it's OpenView that's broken.
For everyone who hasn't heard the news, so OpenView has wound down, like at recording last week. When this is live, maybe it's like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So I don't know if what they've decided to do with their portfolio and stuff, but they definitely let go of a huge part of their team, which sucks for the team. I think most of them, they're gonna land on their feet, so that's the good part, but it still sucks. And I don't think necessarily something that's wrong with OpenView without knowing the details. I don't know what's happening inside, all those meeting rooms and all that stuff. But when you look at the market, all the startups took a hit. We talked about Spotify, the 17% they just let go, but a bunch of companies have been doing it.
Yeah, but Spotify, they're just getting profitable. I mean,
Sure.
they're just at that stage now. I think, so I think you had a narrative that resonated with me, that there were some structural changes in the top of
leadership
of OpenView because they just had the new fund. I mean, they just had almost $1 billion fund. I don't think they're, spend it all.
Yeah.
It's also, venture capital doesn't work like this. Funds need to be released and so forth.
Yeah.
But I don't think that suddenly, they ran out of cash or something like that.
No.
I think there was something structurally changing, which now is triggering a bunch of this. Because at the end of the day, like a venture capital firm is very much is a partnership.
Yeah.
Actually, it's like a law firm.
Yeah.
And if some of the partner lawyers, like, don't want to do this anymore, then, this thing falls apart. And I think apparently there was something to that tune that
Probably
was part of it.
And also they hadn't been making many deals, probably because there weren't any great deals to be made as well.
Also, who has made many deals last year? No one, basically.
So I think in my head at least, it fits that, the market has been hit, and by default, they've also then been hit. And then with the compound of changes and stuff.
Yeah. And since they were so heavy in PLG, it's also now proven that PLG doesn't work.
You know what? That's my favorite.
Shout out, Leah.
Correlation. So that is why. And then I saw Elena Werner do like a meme of it was a goose, basically. So you think it's because of PLG? Let me tell you about PLG.
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
Totally works without seeing the visuals, Mikkel.
Yeah, exactly.
But so, and since PLG is out the window, we need to talk about sales again, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do that. It's the only path forward, really, this PLG fad. It's done. It was here for a couple of years, and now. No, sales is like I wrote, it's still a thing you need to succeed. It's still a thing. And I think what's been interesting, we've had a couple of conversations around, so it's no secret, we talk with a ton of companies in the B2B SaaS space specifically, and there's often challenges with sales. They often have problems, either it's not working out, they're not getting enough deals, or the unit economics, or something is just off, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to hop into some of the signs that your sales team might be broken.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, so what I sometimes kind of give people as what's a symptom? What's a symptom that might point to that there's something broken? It is that after every quarter that you didn't hit, you basically, in one form or another, blame the salespeople. And what that means, and I've seen this so many times, and usually this is kind of the storyline in the board, might be different somewhere else. So maybe this is really for the CRO that sits in the board and maybe gives that storyline. It's like, the team is young, kind of, they're still ramping, or we gave too much discount, or they're forecasting terribly, or, something like that. They were lazy, in effect. Basically, your realm of pinpointing a problem is confined to the very middle of the bow tie, and it's only the sales folks. And I think, that symptom sometimes leads to like, wait a minute. So if you see that happening too many times, sorry, then must be a different story. All of those salespeople, they are professionals, and some are not, by the way, but most of them are professionals. And it can't be that they're just lazy. I'm sorry, I don't believe that, right? And then diving into, really, if you unfold what's happening in the sales team, we're going to talk about this right now, but usually there are also thousands of other reasons that are simply outside of the sales team that are being forgotten.
Yeah. No, and I think we're definitely going to get into the whole circle back to the bow tie.
Yep.
In a second. The first one.
Yep. So what you usually have is, and it depends a little bit on your stage as well, right? You might have issues that are festering in the team around, let's just say, we call it trust and accountability, basically, right? So one part of that is trust in the product, trust in marketing doing their stuff, trust in the market coming back, all kinds of these things, right? And if you get to a point, trust to the CS team,
Yeah.
if you get to the point where some of that trust is basically lost, what's then happening is it's super demotivating, obviously for the sales team, but it basically kind of then turns around into blaming.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's I don't want to have this quota because marketing is not going to deliver anything.
Yeah.
I can't sell this product because it's kind of shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, right? Let's be honest, doesn't work. I don't even want to, what's the point of closing this customer? The CS team is going to, drive them out the window anyway. So why even do it, right? And what really kind of intrinsically happens is that you kind of push the agency of you being successful away from you.
Yeah.
Which is really, when you kind of look at this psychologically, is a coping mechanism. It's like your brain cannot deal with I am not successful.
Yeah.
That just you cannot go to bed with this every night and survive. So what your brain is going to start doing, for the right and the wrong reasons, is going to be like, you know what, I'm actually great.
Yeah.
The problem are all the other things around me.
Yeah.
And one way to fix or make it worse is actually to give different ways to give a sense of control back to the account executive. And this is now very esoteric, and some people might disagree with this, and I'm totally fine with this. But one of the things that we used, I feel successfully, was to make sure that the account executive still has an expectation to prospect him or herself. So yes, you can't self-prospect and hit your target. Forget about it. It's not going to happen. But this can be a way, an outlet for you as a manager or for the brain of that AE to be like, well, I could do a bit more prospecting.
Yeah.
So this is one thing. And I think another thing is, if you do SDR pairing,
Yeah.
what you want to basically kind of achieve is that SDRs are not just randomly assigned or just assigned by a manager to an AE, because then again you have this like, that
I got
SDR
Greg.
sucks, and he's new, he doesn't know shit, and now he's leaving, and or he's sick. If you turn this around and let the AEs choose, and obviously by the time we kind of came up with this, we were basically in the US, and we kind of developed a draft system, but not a football draft system, but the other way around. Kind of the best AE could choose an SDR first, right? And once kind of the round was done, it's like, well, sorry, AE, you should be better, otherwise, anyway. And what then happened was pretty crazy, actually. First of all, the AEs suddenly went for all kinds of SDRs. So some really good AE went for like an SDR that was 3 weeks in the job. And it's like, nope, she's gonna fucking nail it.
Yeah.
She's gonna be on my team. Great. But also they started investing in their development, and if they were sick, it's like, well, I kind of made the choice myself. So you basically want to find ways to give accountability or a kind of sense of control to the account executive, right?
Yeah.
I think another thing that in this trust accountability realm sometimes triggers is salary.
Hot topic.
So this is like that's gonna kill your mood. And my tip to everyone out there is this generation where people didn't talk about their salaries, that ended 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like everyone who has gray hair was still an honorable salary person. That was like, no, sorry, that's off the list. I can't
private.
Yeah, that's private. None of your business.
Yeah.
I mean, in TikTok age,
I'm comfortable.
yeah, in TikTok age, everyone is sharing their salary all the time.
It's in the bio description.
Yeah. And obviously it's not like every time, but if someone asks you like, oh, well, you make this, and you need to be aware that that's the case.
Yeah.
So when you have big salary discrepancies in your sales team, for example, it might be any other team as well, that are like non-obvious for anyone to kind of realize, you are setting yourself up for like a problem, right? And there's so many ways to suddenly explain a salary difference. The most incendiary one kind of these days is, it's because it's a man and I'm a woman. I mean, it's a thing. And you want to have, you don't want the mind to go there, because that's like, I don't want to work for this fucking company anymore.
Yeah.
Which totally understand that, by the way. But what's sometimes then not seen is like, oh, that person has 5 more years of experience and, you know, all kinds of other things. So you wanna create ways where it's extremely obvious if someone finds out.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of obvious why there's a gap or a difference. That doesn't necessarily go into like the super dark place that I just mentioned, right?
I mean, some companies, they will have distinct ladders with clear definitions of what's required to get to the next kind of bucket, right?
Yeah. So I gotta say this, and I know that the chief HR officer of the company I was at is not listening to the show. But I gotta say, I really like salary bands, and she was the one convincing me of this. Makes it extremely easy to have all of those conversations. It's an extreme big pain to pull off, and you should only do it once you're like, I don't know, 250 people or something like this. But makes all of that pain kind of go away.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's the trust and accountability. That's one of the signs that something is broken. So basically blaming, oh, it's a terrible product, or marketing isn't doing anything.
Why don't you intro the next one, Mikkel?
The commitment. So one of the things we've talked a bit about is quota attainment, and they're down, right? And I think especially right now, if you put forward a quota that you know there's no chance anyone is going to make that quota, do you think they're going to be committed?
Yeah.
No.
So that's a good question. And we had Chris Allop on the show with like, well, you know, good times, bad times. You just got to roll with it. I think the answer isn't quite that simple, actually. I think in some cases it might be, but usually it's not. I think if you simply do not have enough opportunities to feed anyone, and even if you say like, hey, you need to bring yourself 30-40% of your quota by self-prospecting, it might not work out, right? So and in this case, quota works like any goal that's out there. If it's unachievable, you will simply not subscribe to it.
Yeah.
It's like you're
and I think this is a big kind of thing that happens ever so often. Some people, they will say yes, but that does not mean they are bought in. That does not mean they are committed.
Yeah.
Right?
If someone says, sure, boss.
Yeah. Good.
Sure,
we'll
boss.
do it.
Sure. So, I mean, then you know, you kind of, you can pick up on these things. And basically, again, what happens for the salesperson, we're very psychological here today.
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
we also both had like an elective.
Yeah.
So we're
true.
basically shrinks.
No, but it's you know, if you don't buy into a goal, the goal loses any point of being there. It's not motivating. It's actually demotivating. You can also go in the opposite direction if something is too easy. It also kind of doesn't make sense. You know, it should be in the stretch zone.
Yeah.
That's where it needs to be. This is where you can get someone, you know, committing and pushing for the best, and then you might need to, then you get the best results. But I think what is sometimes helpful, and this only works if you have done the math yourself, you can math it out with them.
Yeah.
So we have done this many times with the reps, mathed it out for them, and basically showed them on a piece of paper that, you know, everything else being equal, it should kind of be possible here, right? Which then also led to, you know, we educated the team, which was kind of good, but sometimes when it didn't fit us, it's kind of bad.
Yeah.
You know, when there was an SDR leaving or two SDRs were leaving, and then they're like, Tony, I just did the same math that you did with me, and it's not working out. So what are we going to do here? And then you need to have, it's just a management conversation.
But I actually think that's also a positive thing. You want them to tell you the math isn't working out anymore because this happened. So I think that also shows a little bit of a commitment still to the goal, which, and obviously there's a, you know, money involved in this scenario. There's a commission, but
what you can do though is number one, you know, push back and say, okay, this now happened, you know, shit happens. This is business. What are you going to do about it? Right? Kind of push accountability agency back to the person. And then the other thing, and this is, I think is a fantastic trick in the mid market and up, and maybe it's only in the mid market. But have the manager of the person distribute opportunities, distribute inbounds,
Yeah.
or distribute round robin SDR bookings.
Yeah.
So what you do with that is basically you can, be in the session and be like, yep, I know math doesn't work out. You know what, my friend, I'll tilt you a couple of more opportunities.
Yeah.
To try and get you there. And suddenly you create this pact between the two. But also, I'm not leaving you out to dry. And also, hey, I'm creating a path. But for that path to work out, you also need to do a bunch of work.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of really trying to kind of get those things together. And then ultimately what, once someone just doesn't at all buy into, what you're kind of trying to achieve, it's going to be very difficult to make that person,
Yeah.
make that sales part of the sales team work out.
So, and maybe this is a silly question, but how do you actually know that you have their buy-in, their commitment?
So I think this is more of a leadership kind of thing. I think number one, you'll for some reason sales reps are always smokers. I don't know why. It seems like it. Just go out, on a smoke break with them, or have your sales ops guy, be there and kind of hear what they're saying there, because that's where they're probably gonna like, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
Those will be ways you're gonna figure this out. Depending on the culture you have, those things will also come up in the one-on-one with the VP or with the manager, and then ultimately, when you're getting to the point someone isn't performing, and then you push a difficult conversation, right? Basically, a performance conversation from the manager to the person, and then the person is shooting back with like, but all of that stuff was impossible to begin with.
Yeah.
Then you kind of hear it, right?
Yeah.
And I think if your reps are sitting in performance conversations and they are unable to push back on like, well, I couldn't have done this, I can math it out for you, my friend.
Yeah.
I think then you actually you don't have a well-educated sales team around this.
Yeah.
So I would heavily encourage teaching people that. It can when opportunity supplies on your side, it can basically kind of solve a lot of motivation problems. When it's not on your side, you have to come up with a solution anyway, right? Kind of, and that's then one.
Yeah. No, I get that. The third one is also an interesting one. I can't remember what the book was called. It's also something on leadership and people management, but it was basically a pyramid. And I think in the first you needed trust, and then you actually, with trust, you could have conflict. And you actually wanted to have conflict. You didn't want to have a conflict-free environment, I was just like, whoa, that's kind of interesting. That's the third kind of thing we're gonna hop into now. And
this year is really this talks really into the competitive nature of sales, which is kind of weird. Why is sales competitive? What's important here is that think about your sales team and how much do they help each other. And the answer is usually they don't help each other that much. There's you have a lot of lone wolf kind of guys in the sales team, which is usually a bad sign, actually. And what should be happening is that people help each other out. They might do it because they want to become manager, and that's a great way to show already leadership and basically doing some of the things you would be doing as a manager. The other thing is just to do it because that's the company culture, or that's the culture in the team, or that's what you're fostering. Because again, right, if you help someone close a deal, it's not like that deal could have now belonged to you or something. There's very little competition in that sense. Sure, sometimes you do some force ranking, like who gets the better ops, and yes, there is some competition. You want to nurture that to a degree, but you also don't want to have it flop over and suddenly become like a super toxic Hunger Games kind of environment. And I would kind of try and encourage that as much as possible, right? If it doesn't happen, you probably have a problem. And then on the flip side, and I think this is where you should be thinking about either splitting a deal or double bubbling, so double incentivizing people. Is I had this situation happen to me a couple of times. Like, okay, junior sales rep, prospect his own meeting, tiny company, everything is good. after 2 calls is like, oops, part of a much bigger company. And suddenly the VP of the much bigger company that is in ownership from, someone else, shows up. So you have like a rules of engagement kind of issue here, sure. But you also have is that junior person really the best one running the deal?
Yeah.
And for me, this is kind of the line in the sand. Once you want someone that's not a manager to jump on a deal and work a deal, then it starts to become or smell like, hey, we need to split the deal, or we need to kind of figure something else out, right? And that for me is the line in the sand. Everything that's around coaching and so forth is straightforward. And the reason why you want to have your folks collaborate to some degree is simply by the sheer amount of information that is being filtered through the sales team, and therefore should also you should try and disseminate that through the sales team as well, right? Hey, this new feature, how are you pitching it? Hey, was just on a call, those competitors are weak in this area.
Yeah.
Whatever, industry news, hey, this is how you can build this into your pitch. Or, hey, this is a great cold pitch that I've been, whatever it might be, you want those things to be shared across, and not being kind of hoarded and held back and so forth, right?
So basically, this is a means to remove some of the potential conflict that people might fear that would hold them from actually taking the necessary steps to bring over a deal.
Yeah,
right.
I think it's also just creating that. Hey, this is what normal looks like.
Yeah.
If you have your most successful reps be like always sitting in the corner, not working with anyone, that's a problem. You kind of need to find a way out of this, right? But ultimately, encouraging that collaboration, I think that's good. Sign that your team is broken is you have no one collaborating. Everyone is kind of self-optimizing.
Yeah.
And then you simply will not have a good team coming out of this.
Yeah. I think there's the other side where you do want to have some conflicts, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Let's maybe hop into that one. I don't know if you have maybe a great example. Otherwise, I can.
You start and I'll add.
So a couple that come to mind is the classic. Hey, to close this deal, we need to discount, right? And that can trigger actually a conflict internally because there's some negotiation happening. The rep has a monetary incentive, bringing them closer to a commission check, right?
Yep.
And the company wants to have good metrics in the business at the end of the day.
Yeah. So what usually happens on this discounting thing is, sure, the rep directly is impacted by the discount they give, right? But for them, economically speaking, they get either $1,000 without the discount, or they get $800 with a discount.
Yeah.
For them, it's still $800. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. And the thing that you want to create here is you do want to create a bit of friction. I wouldn't call it conflict, but friction in the process. Because what sometimes happens is that or probably it happens all the time, like when the rep is talking to you, they're always taking the side of the customer. And when they kind of talk to the customer, they're taking the side of the company, obviously. And they're kind of stuck in this weird spot in between, right? So as the customer is making it difficult for the rep, saying, can't pay that much, you kind of need to make it a little bit difficult for the rep as well to kind of get the discount. And this is not you need to click 1,000 buttons here in order to get the discount approved. And so it shouldn't be completely automated. Like, I want to have 30% and boop, yes, you have it approved. I think there should be some pain. And that's basically the idea of creating those discounting hierarchies. Like, 20% your manager can do without, anything. 30% you need to go to the manager of the manager. And that's already, you can do this once, you can do this twice, but at some point your manager is going to say, like, I'm not going to walk up to Bob anymore. I'm sorry. You need to get this deal over the line yourself now.
Yeah.
This is a good thing where you want to create a little bit of conflict actually coming up there.
I think the other could be the whole support layer for sales. This is super top of mind for a lot of sales reps. Do they get the right enablement from marketing in terms of material, case studies, etc.? Do they get the right composition of inbounds as well? And I think that's where you want to make sure that there's a bit of tension as well, right?
Yeah.
Because if marketing is delivering the inbounds and sales is not hitting, either it's because of the composition or it's because of the rep. So there has to be some kind of friction or conflict there as well to get to the root of what's actually happening.
So what we did to solve this, we basically created a mini model per rep.
Yeah.
So what we did was we looked at all the opportunities that a specific rep got served or kind of received, and then we applied what the class was doing in terms of conversion rate, ACV, and sales cycles, and then we basically kind of compared what the rep, according to the model, should have closed by now, versus what he or she actually did close by now. And what this is basically then creating is, yes, this rep is hitting 100% quota, well done, but he or she did that with way too many opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? And this is then, you shouldn't kind of suddenly pay a lesser commission check. I think that doesn't make sense. But you basically kind of need to create a bit of like, actually, you're not processing that stuff really well. We actually need to kind of send this somewhere else, right? And then you create competition around the processing metrics. Like the people converting the best, fastest, and as the highest ACV, they should be getting the most opportunities. Once they're filled up, kind of the next one gets it. And yes, that is creating a little bit of competition, which I think is a good thing. It just shouldn't keel over, basically, right? And what is super, and we're almost going back to this, lack of commitment and trust and stuff. What is super demotivating for everyone else on the team is they close fairly well, but they don't hit target. They have difficult conversation with their managers. They don't get in quota paid out. And then they look into sales and it's like, well, but he's sitting on 100 opportunities here.
Yeah. Totally unreasonable.
And then it's like, maybe I need to leave this team now.
Yeah.
And I think this is where people just need to kind of have an eye on to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then when it does happen, the way you then argue around it is a little bit through competitive means. It's like, well, you're behind your class in conversion rates. You're behind your class in ACVs. Sorry, I can't keep feeding you and, the other people can make more money for me. So, and I'm, to a degree, yes, I'm also a business person. So I need to funnel the opportunities where I get the most return.
Yeah. And I think that actually also fosters a bit of trust, because if he or she then starts performing according to the class, they also know they will get fed.
It's just very transparent rules.
Yeah.
Right? Because the opposite is like, well, why is he or she getting all of those opportunities?
Yeah.
Is it because, they go drinking together or is it because he's a man? Or is like, what is the intransparent reason behind that person being favored? If you can make it extremely crystal clear, well, it's because of 1, 2, and 3, then it's also much more operational, so to speak, for the other side to be like, you know what, I'm going to improve 1, 2, and 3, and then I should be getting that stuff.
Yeah. So these were kind of the soft sides.
Yeah.
Almost inspired by the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah.
We needed to throw in a bonus.
Yes.
To kind of, it gels better with our way of thinking, a bit more numbers, process driven.
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned the bow tie.
So I mentioned the bow tie. Obviously, that has to do with the supply and demand side of the sales team. Are they getting enough stuff in order to hit quota? I usually say I only serve my reps 80% of the opportunities they need, and versus the 100% they need to hit target.
Yeah.
And I basically say like, well, it's not my job to guarantee your OTE.
No,
it's your job. And you can hit OTE by on target earnings, so 100% of your goal. You can hit that by converting better at a higher ACV or faster, or you can just create more opportunities yourself.
Yeah.
And basically kind of then I'm giving this revenue formula to the rep and say like, I get you to 80%, but you need to, to get to the big payday, you need to kind of do some extraordinary stuff on top, right? And then I think the other things that people sometimes miss out on or over-index on, it's a little bit unclear to me. So there is a, Goldilocks ratio of what your on-target earnings number should be versus how much money you bring into the company. It's kind of an efficiency metric, right?
Yeah.
And best in class, they say between 4 and 5 times. So if you earn $200,000 a year, best in class would be that you bring in $1 million in ARR, right? That's kind of the best in class kind of way. And it's usually, so this is, I was on a call the other day. It's usually the other way around. It's usually that they say, oh, we gave this quota, we gave $1 million quota to the rep because he cost us 200,000. So
Yeah.
you know,
That's how it should
he has
be.
to bring in 1 million,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then you kind of do the reverse math, and it's like, well, how many opportunities from how many? And you kind of figure out, well, the 1 million is probably the wrong target to set. On the other day, I was on the reverse call actually though, and I basically was like, okay, you know, everything looked great in the funnel. Like everything was perfect. They're booking meetings like crazy. You know, outbound could scale that, and those opportunities converted really well. And they were like, but something is broken in our sales process. We don't get it. It's, we're not getting the returns we want to, because for me listening to this, like, guys, you should be like at 6K payback or something like this. This sounds fantastic what you guys have going. It's like, just put in more money yet. You know? And then, and I usually don't do this because usually it's not a problem, but says, so wait a minute, how many A's do you have? How much do they close on average? And, is this roughly what they're getting per year? So I kind of did the quick math on the call, and I was like, I think they had 1.5 to 2x of OTE. And it's like, that's your problem, guys. That's your problem. And you actually need to figure out, do you need to have this amount of people to run all of those opportunities, or could you have fewer? And then one guy was saying, well, I just opened up 3 people's calendars, and they're kind of empty. And I also heard now that some of them are jumping on calls 2 at a time, so 2 reps on one opportunity. It's like, maybe there's some opportunity here to improve. Like, I think there is. I think there is.
So those were the signs sales are broken.
So, I mean, this is, wrapping this up, right? Make sure you keep let's just say you keep agency with the rep, right? You need to find ways to kind of reduce, you can say, those excuses, but basically what you're trying to achieve is that the rep thinks that they can, and truly so, influence their own destiny. It's really important. Number 2, make sure that the targets that you're setting, whether it's quota or goals or whatever, are kind of fair. And if they're tilting into the unfair, because sometimes that happens, find ways to kind of remedy that fact, right? Because otherwise people just, unsubscribe and say, I don't give a shit about this target anymore. And then, the fear of conflict, which is basically kind of a bit of friction. People should be helping each other. There should be, in some areas, a little bit of friction, a little bit of competition, because that, in the right balance can be super helpful and healthy for your team. And then lastly, yes, you do need to get the unit economics, right? You need to use them in the right way. So don't put the cart in front of the horse, do it the other way around. Kind of figure out what is my, on target earnings ratio. And when it's not good, don't just go in and change the target, but figure out how they could possibly close more.
I mean, it has been such an easy fix if you could just change the target.
You would be surprised how many people are doing it like this. You would be surprised. Okay, thank you, Mikkel.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for listening. Bye.